Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. Holland Squallen, Clis Tluktumuk, Clas Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Our first item is budget engagement 2025 to 2029, what we heard report. And we have our staff here. I'll turn it over to them.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Fiona Rayher, and I'm the Public Engagement Specialist, and I'm here with Christina Moore, Director of Communications. Our presentation today is an overview of public feedback received on the draft 2025 to 2029 financial plan, which I will continue to refer to as the draft plan. The objectives of today's presentation are twofold. To introduce fall community input on community priorities relating to the draft plan to inform Council's decision-making. We will spend some time this morning presenting major themes. In addition, an extensive What We Heard report, including the complete list of public comments, is included in your agenda package. And number two, to gather early feedback on fall 2024 public engagement activities to improve next year's work. Public engagement on the draft plan began in May with a spring campaign centered on understanding community priorities. This campaign featured an online survey and a series of in-person pop-ups that gave Council and staff an opportunity to discuss the public's priorities. Questions were asked across a wide range of topics, but as a quick high-level overview, the following 5 priorities, ranked by number of respondents, were mentioned most when asked to prioritize spending in 2025. Number 1 was recreation, facilities, and programming. Number 2, land use planning and development services. Number 3, active transportation. Number 4, climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. Number 5, vehicle transportation infrastructure. On October 1st, a fall budget engagement campaign was launched to coincide with Council budget workshops and raise awareness of and seek feedback on the draft plan. The main goals of this campaign were to present the budget in a digestible form and pique the interests of residents to explore the budget. We provided a variety of ways to chime in, all of this with the goal to inform Council of community sentiment as you work towards adopting the budget. The fall budget engagement campaign goals are as follows: to provide low barrier ways for residents to learn about, discuss, ask questions, and provide feedback on the draft plan and the aligned engagement process. To seek public input to help inform Council's understanding of public sentiment and support decision-making. To inform district staff, particularly budget managers, of the public's priorities. This slide highlights the engagement tactics used during the campaign. In-person events included Coffee with Council events. There were 3 of them, held at Locavore, Cafe Garibaldi, and Brackendale Bean. A mayor's drop-in at Municipal Hall. A table at the Seniors Wellness and Information Fair at the 55 Activity Center. And of course, the budget open house at Brennan Park Recreation Center. Communications and public engagement outreach included news release to local media outlets, e-news email newsletter inclusions, print advertising in the Squamish Chief, digital advertising in the Squamish Reporter and the Squamish Chief, social media posts and advertising, posters at district facilities, posters at 9 bus shelters, gathered emails through budget feedback at squamish.ca, a budget banter comments board and comment cards at Brennan Park Recreation Center, and an opportunity for residents to ask a question or leave a comment on Let's Talk Squamish. The budget open house was an opportunity for residents to ask questions in an open venue and speak one-on-one with council members and key staff about the draft plan. Despite the rescheduled event due to a power outage, we estimate that approximately 80 people attended the event. This year saw the launch of an improved tool that is a module as part of the district's budgetary software. The tool allowed residents to drill down into the budget within the main topic areas, which are capital projects and special operating. This is a very visual tool and lets users explore the budget areas and then budget area, then category, then department, and then into the individual project details. One big improvement over last year was that residents were able to see the costs and details on the same screen and that the information is searchable. We have many ideas for how we can further improve on this tool and provide additional information to the public next year, especially now that staff have such a strong baseline understanding of the tool. This slide shows a few of the metrics that we are tracking year over year in our campaigns. The next slide will show how these compare to previous years. For reference, reach is the total number of accounts reached through budget-related content on social media. Engagements include likes, link clicks, reactions, and shares. Let's Talk Squamish was once again the home base for information and links for budget information. The number of visits to this page is primarily through links from our social media and digital media advertising. Council media streams refers to the number of people who watched some or all of the council meetings throughout October. Budget book users refers to the number of engagements using the online Budget Explorer tool. The interactive budget tool received 478 views. And here is a comparison year over year over the course of 3 years. The increase in engagement, as you'll notice, was driven by a higher posting cadence and a very high performing advertisement, which included a video featuring Mayor Herford discussing the importance of participating in this year's 2025 budget. This advertisement generated 6,906 post engagements, including reactions, likes, comments, follows, link clicks, video plays, and post shares. The main reason for not doing a survey this fall was that we have committed to moving the community priorities survey to spring engagement. This provides a better timeline for input prior to budget managers building their budgets. Into the meat of it, a total of 303 comments, questions, and conversation themes were collated and categorized. Kiteboarding access was the top theme this year due to 87 letters that were sent in addition to a letter from the Squamish Wind Sports Society, which has been included in your package. Also, a sample of these 87 letters has been included in your appendix in the package. The wind sports community primarily want improved safe access for kiteboarding to ensure it remains a viable recreation pursuit in Squamish, and they are looking for district funding, support, and advocacy to make this happen. Investment in recreation and culture services and facilities was the second place theme, with the top sub-themes being advocacy for a second ice rink and advocacy for making arts and culture more of a priority. For this latter sub-theme, there is concern that arts and culture will not be adequately addressed in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan until 2027. Comments reflected the desire for arts and culture to have more equal weights to sports. Letters were received from Squamish Arts, Sea to Sky Singers, and the How Sound Performing Arts Association. Lawn bowling has been requested by seniors as well, who expressed concerns about any further delay given that they have funding to contribute. This included a letter from Squamish 55 Plus Community Society. There were also concerns about pool capacity with requests for a second pool, and there were requests for playgrounds in Ravenswood, Seven Peaks, and Brennan Park. Tax increase and spending landed as a third most addressed theme, largely because of the proposed property tax increase. Predominant feedback was that the proposed tax increase to households would make the cost of living even more unaffordable. There were also concerns about overspending given the size of the proposed tax increase and requests that council take a closer look at needs versus wants, suggesting that a tax increase be in line with inflation. There was a desire for council to prioritize basic infrastructure and amenities over spending on initiatives such as public art, Squamish Adventure Center upgrades, and the Sue Big Oil campaign. Transit and transportation improvements landed as the fourth most addressed theme, with housing and development and economic and community development as close seconds. For transit and transportation improvements, there were comments in support of increased transit, both local and regional, to help people move around without a car. There were comments relating to downtown paid parking plans and questions about parking for employees, general lack of parking, impacts on businesses, and where revenue would go. There were comments about an airport strategy now that the Chikai debris flow barrier is approved, intersection safety, industrial traffic speeding on 3rd, and U-turns at Clark Drive and Highway 99. For housing and development, people voiced the need for affordable and diverse housing options, including homes for single parents, single-level homes for seniors, and affordable home ownership was referenced. There is concern that developers are not contributing enough to affordable housing and other amenities. There were comments that residential growth should be slowed, the official community plan should be updated given the rapidly changing community, and infrastructure should focus on what people need now as well as aspirations for the future. For economic and community development, people voiced the need for more services and support for small businesses, including grant writing support via funding to the Squamish Chamber of Commerce, which was feedback received through a letter in your package. Tourism Squamish raised the reduction in economic and community development funding. They requested clarity on plans for 2025, support for updates to the Adventure Center and the center's parking lot study, and various other comments outlined in their letter included in your package. The Business Improvement Association, as late feedback, requested a detailed breakdown on the $600,000 budget for the paid parking initiative and an update on the plan. They also addressed concern about the reduction in economic and community development funding. And you have received this letter now. Residents expressed concerns about the supply of medium industry land, the cost of industrial rent, missed opportunity to focus on the Squamish Adventure brand, and the shift away from business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts. Other themes are as follows: infrastructure improvements sat at 4%. There were public requests for road maintenance on Westway Avenue, paving of the turf field road, adding a semi-dump while, sandy dump, while updating the wastewater treatment plant, and a suggestion to relocate Municipal Hall to build affordable housing on the current site. Next is pedestrian, cyclist, micromobility, safety concerns, and active transportation at 3%. There were various requests and suggestions for bike lane investments, north-south, active transportation, safety improvements from Industrial Park to Brackendale, concerns of traffic speeding, and support for a bike lane sweeper. Next was climate adaptation and mitigation and natural environment at 3%. There was interest in clean energy investment, EV charging infrastructure, wildlife connectivity corridors, amphibian protection, and marine life education at Oceanfront Park. Next is fire rescue, search and rescue, and police safety at 2%. There were questions about the cost of the police tent and SAR relocation costs, a concern about downtown safety in relation to the homeless population, and requests for assurances that fire rescue staff can meet the demands of growth. And finally, at 2%, we had some engagement feedback. There were suggestions for other ways to gauge public opinion, such as quick poll surveys, an easier to navigate budget page, and improved outreach to support seniors' engagement. This table highlights how community priorities heard through annual budget conversations have shifted year over year. As topics are actioned in the budget, for example, fire hall replacements and pickleball, we have seen them drop off in place of others, such as kiteboarding access. We know the financial plan is a big nut to crack for residents, so we much appreciate all who took the time to engage with us. It is also worth noting that feedback is gathered year-round on a variety of topics, which all helps to support the development of budgets by our budget managers. Based on the information in this presentation, we recommend that Council receive for information the budget engagement what we heard report summarizing public comments and questions relating to the proposed 2025 to 2029 financial plan. Thank you for listening, and this is the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much. Council questions? Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much for the presentation and all the work you do to collect the valuable feedback. It's a big job. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for, I know that it's a lot of work to collate and sort of synthesize all the information, all the many thousands of comments. So thank you for that. One of the conversations I had on the budget night was with the president of the Squamish 55 Center or Society, Marlene, who was interested in the lawn bowling. And I noticed their concern was that the project might not go ahead this year because their understanding was there were $15,000 in budget that was required. The difference between their $39,000 and the $54,000 required to do the lawn bowling wasn't yet allocated. But when I look in the budget right now, it looks like we have $39,000 in grants, which I assume is the money coming from the Senior Society, and $15,000 from community amenity contributions. So is that project fully funded for 2025? Do I understand that correctly? Sorry if I'm going past the budget engagement and into an actual budget thing. But
We have the capacity to answer our budget questions in the room, so that's absolutely what we're here for.
We will defer to the budget managers of the area for the answers to those questions.
Hi, I'm JDO, pronouns he and him, Director of Recreation and Culture. Through the chair, so the $39,000 is a grant that is in the bank for the society, so that's there. $15,000 is what's anticipated to fund the remaining costs to do the lawn bowling area. So at this time, we should be able to move forward with the project if it moves forward in this budget process. We'll have to re-update our quote and go through procurement to make sure there's no further gap. But yeah, we should be able to fund it based on our current estimations.
on the same topic, I know a similar proposal for the cricket pitch had come through a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and we ran into an issue where we added something to the budget reasonably late and then didn't have staff capacity to actually implement the project. So the Cricket Society was obviously somewhat disappointed. Are we in this similar situation now where we've allocated funding reasonably late, made this decision reasonably late, and may run into a staff capacity issue, or do we have the staff capacity to oversee the installation of the lawn bowling?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation to have with facilities and construction. Collaboratively, we will discuss the capacity to be able to deliver those. When new projects get added, we have to decide what kind of goes off the list or what gets deferred. So certain ones have timing elements, this depending on priority of council. So yeah, we can work collaboratively to plan to deliver the projects.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Stoner. Also, welcome back, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. It's nice to be back in this room and happy to see that Elmo's still here, hanging out, waiting for me. Missed him for the last 6 months. On the What We Heard report, thank you very much for all the work. Page 5 summarizes the feedback from the spring engagement on community priorities for 2025 across 5 different topics. And I'm wondering if it's at all possible to break down our proposed 2025 spending across those same categories, just to get a sense of our alignment of our spending with the requests from community.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, the suggestion. Yeah, absolutely, we can. Some of the categories are really easy to pull out from our chart of accounts. Others are a bit more difficult, but it's certainly a great idea and a great suggestion to match those, and something we'll endeavor to do.
Thanks. I have other budget related questions, but I'll leave them unless you want me to keep going.
I think we should keep going here a little bit. We have some time and some expertise in the room, so go ahead.
It's a very full room. It's like a welcoming committee. Nice to see you all. All right, a few detailed questions that came up in terms of the feedback that I heard and picked up on. There was quite a few comments around the delay of the Parks and Rec master plan and how this might actually delay additional work or anticipated work. And I'm just wondering if staff can speak to what, if any, work is being put on hold while that master plan has been delayed.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the mayor, Megan Latimer, General Manager of Community Services. So the master plan update, it is really important to be able to set those broader priorities and departmental objectives. But work is not actually being held until it's refreshed. The current master plan we work with came out in 2012. So staff are still moving forward with the recommendations from that plan where relevant. And then there's other strategic direction that comes in from things like the Brennan Park Fields and Lands Master Plan, the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Strategy, and other district strategies like the Real Estate Facilities Master Plan. One thing that is being put on hold by delaying the plan for 2 more years would be some of the individual park planning processes. So things like Junction Park, Rose Park, and Smoke Bluffs Park. So those are planned to be incorporated in the 2027 update.
Thank you for that detail. That's helpful. And then on the SAR relocation item, I'm just wondering if staff can speak to what the budget amount will actually deliver. I feel like there was a little bit of confusion within the community as to what is being committed to with the budget line item. I don't see the correct, oh, maybe online. There we go. Hi.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Plum.
Good morning, Neil Plum, Director of Real Estate. So, yeah, the budget for the SAR relocation at the highest level is to reproduce what they have right now in the forestry building over on Loggers Lane. It's about 3,100. There's about just under 5,000 square feet of covered space in building space that would be reconstructed there, and some parking area as well that would basically reproduce what they have there. So that's sort of the first phase of the relocation. They have plans for the longer term for a bigger facility, but that would be down the road. So this is simply a replacement of what they have right now. And the budget includes all of the site preparation work that would be required there. There's no municipal water at the airport and sewers, so septic fields and wells have to be constructed there. And then that's simply the rest of it is the cost of construction. We did look at other options on an interim basis in the business park to see if there's something we could lease temporarily, but there was no real clear path that we could see in the business park there because they have a very big parking requirement And industrial land is very expensive in the business park now compared to this location where there's actually zero land costs associated with this budget item at the airport. So we needed to have a clear path to completion for 2026 on this project when their leases expired. So the determination was to relocate them to the airport, which is where they want to be in the long term anyhow. And then do the interim step or the preliminary phase now and get started on that.
Okay, that's helpful. That delivers the full construction of the project. And just as a follow-up, are we pursuing any provincial grant funding or advocacy in order to support that build, given that SAR is technically a provincially mandated service?
Yes, if I may, I'm going to pass that off to Pascal St. Louis, who's also working with real estate on that file. I believe she's in the room.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you for the question. Through the mayor, yes, we are going to be having more conversations with the Ministry of Emergency Readiness, Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. We did already have a quick plug on this during UMBC, where we indicated that there was a significant burden on local municipalities to have to fund the relocation of our Squamish SAR. So we're planning to re-engage with both EMCR and likely also as well with the SLRD. They both benefit from having SAR operate within the Sea to Sky. So that's forthcoming.
Thank you for that clarification. Really appreciate it. And then one that is not super budget specific, but I'm going to stretch here a little bit because I did get a fair bit of feedback around EV charging at Brennan Park. And there are 2 stalls at Brennan Park that are staff specific. And I'm just curious if there's any ability to make those publicly accessible or what the vision is for getting EV charging at Brennan Park. I love it when multiple people try and come to the mic at the same time.
Good morning, Jesse Moore with Capital, Manager of Capital Projects. We are in the process of preparing to install EV chargers at Brennan Park. So actually just this week, actually, I believe our tender has closed. So the plan is to install, I believe it's 4 level 2 chargers and 3 level 3 chargers at Brennan Park. The schedule for that is to complete next year. I would assume somewhere probably around the summer of next year that will be complete. So there is a number of chargers coming there. And if I can maybe jump to the question about the staff EV charging parking, that's not part of the district's public EV charging network. But like I said, we are planning on installing these chargers next year.
Thank you. Other questions? I have a question. In both the letter from the chamber and the Tourism Squamish letter, there was talking about the marine access and the timing of that. And I just wanted if someone could run us through and make sure we understand what activities are planned at what time and if there's other factors in delivering that work. Just want to make sure we understand where we sit currently before we contemplate potentially moving. Mr. Vilniuskas?
Are you, just to clarify, are you asking about the marine access study?
Yeah, and marine access study, and I mean they've put which includes boat launch and so on, like that work. Where does that sit in the timeline at this point in the budget we have?
The only item in the budget we have is for next year. Let me just pull it up. Is the licensing at the Loggers Lane? Essentially, where the docks are on Loggers Lane. So upland licensing is the only item that's in the budget for next year that relates to marine access. That's part of the planning department's work plan. There's a couple of projects that are happening this year that we're hoping to wrap up by the end of the year. And then there's the marine sector impact study that was in the budget, I believe, for 2024, 2025, but perhaps Ms. Wenge can speak to it in terms of the economic development capacity.
Julie Wenge, General Manager of Community Development. At the moment, that has not been prioritized as
as one of our priorities for next year. There's a number of other initiatives in the economic development portfolio that have been prioritised higher.
Okay, and then as far as the boat launch study work, are there things that need to happen in advance of that, or is it a capacity? I'm just trying to understand what pieces need to fit together here. Is it a and both things are challenging, obviously, whether it's our capacity or work that needs to be completed prior to engaging. But where does that piece of this stand? Is this something that is our capacity, or is it some other orders of work?
So the boat launch feasibility study is something that we're working on this year. And that is meant to wrap up by the end of the year. So we'll have the feasibility analysis of where a boat launch could go. It's not, the boat launch itself is not a project that's in the budget, but it is something that we're currently working on.
Okay, so then that should be in place to inform next budget cycle implementation of whatever those recommendations may be. Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
That's the kind of piece I was looking for. Thank you. Other questions while we have everybody here? Go ahead, Councillor Penigo.
Yeah, a few things. There was a couple comments about not only the timing of the Parks and Rec master plan, but whether or not arts and culture, how much they would be included in that, and that seemed to be an open question of the inclusion of culture, at least in the 5-year plan. Is that a question that we could answer now to provide some comfort without moving the funding necessarily envelope, or is that something that really needs to be sort of determined as we get further down the road?
Thank you through the mayor. So in terms of the scoping for the Parks and Rec master plan, the intention of staff would be to bring options back to council in 2027. We do currently have an arts, culture, and heritage strategy that is relatively recent, 2021, I believe. So in terms of whether we would continue to look at that as our guiding document or wrap it into the Parks and Rec master plan, that would be brought back to council at a later date when the Parks and Rec master plan scoping is underway.
Okay, thank you. And just jumping around here a little bit, there were a few things like the turf field paving, which I believe has been done or is about to be done. Some questions about developer contributions, and we actually have a report on that this afternoon. We just heard about the boat launch feasibility study. So there's a bunch of things that people are sort of asking about or talking about in this specific context. And I'm wondering if there's any plan or capacity to sort of where we have more direct responses or like, oh, this is actually already in progress, the capacity to kind of wrap it up in that context, as opposed to, I think we had individual conversations with people and tried to explain where things were happening, where we knew, but as part of a wrap up, is there any ability to kind of summarize the things that are actually already in the pipeline? And maybe actually coming out of our budget decisions of what we've decided in to address these things.
Through the chair, we have been answering questions, and there are still some questions that are outstanding, but we're working on as they have been raised through Let's Talk Squamish. So there are a number of places where we have been able to confirm some of this information. One of the examples was the search and rescue. And we could probably look through there, and where questions are still outstanding, we could look to answer some of those outstanding questions as well. Yeah, we'll take a look.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, it wasn't just sort of trying to wrap my head around all kinds of great conversations came out of the budget discussion, and one piece that it highlighted to me is that people weren't clear on some of the stuff we were already doing. And so how do we help people understand that? And there's just so much information. It's not necessarily easy to figure out how to do that. But thank you. Switching gears, and this is I'm not sure if we'll have an answer, but we've been working with a non-market change number of 3%, which has been somewhat of an estimate, but it's been in the budget for a while. And we've, had several months of seeing what permits and so on are actually coming in. And I'm just wondering for this year and future years, if we have any sort of hints that those numbers are really solid or might change, or any indication about where that is heading.
Thank you for the question through the mayor. As we've indicated in the past, it's a very difficult number to ascertain, to get a hold of. There's a lot of variability. There's not just permitting. There's changes in class. That is a big reason why it's been consolidated at the BC assessment level and not at a local government level, because different things affect it. Our best guess is always around trending, and that's what we do. Currently, we have it in 3%. There's no indication that it's going to be much higher than that, and no indication that it's going to be lower. And that's really why it's important to talk about the 12.6 as well as the 9.6% when we're talking about the tax increases, that it is that 3% is nothing but an indication at the time, and until we have those assessment rolls confirmed, and it doesn't change the tax revenue requirement, it really just changes who's paying for it. So again, it's an indication because we're looking at community to community comparability. Some communities don't even come out with the overall tax revenue requirement. They just come in with the 9.6%, so the net. But yeah, from a comparable perspective, it's important to have it there, but the focus is really on our tax revenue requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Councillor Greenlaw, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Thank you so much for all your hard work. And it is a lot of information to collate and make sense of, so I appreciate it. And I was wondering if there was any breakdown of how many people were engaging as opposed to how many engagements, for instance, like as an exaggeration, is it 50 people engaging like 1,000 times? Or is it, 5,000 people engaging 1.5 times kind of thing?
Through the mayor, there are a handful of people who show up and have their voice heard around the same or similar issues. But for the most part, I would say a lot of the faces that I've personally seen, and I've gone to all of the events except for one, which Christina went to, are new faces, and the information that I read through over and over is very diverse, and it seems to be coming from many different people for the most part.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to get a sense of, like how broad the actual intake is. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Hereford. I was going to start with an item I was thinking to contribute as a comment, but maybe I'll put it out as a question in case you may have any observations on it from our communications department. We've received, as has been noted, 87 odd letters from the kiteboarding community, not all of whom live in Squamish, and also the letter from the Squamish Wind Sports Society. Now, none of those pieces of correspondence refer to a budget. And so really my question or observation is maybe this might have been included in a regular meeting council agenda, correspondence received or action request. And that would have been a different opportunity for council to discuss it. But I'm wondering if there may be any observation on how you've made that decision to allocate certain correspondence received to the budget correspondence rather than to regular council correspondence with that item as illustration.
To the chair, I think in part it was due to timing, given that we were the budget conversations, the budget discussions were happening during this time, during the time that the letters were received, and recognizing that there is certainly a timeliness to when the announcement was made about the oceanfront, the Squamish Feather Park, and budget being very closely tied together. When we read the letters, we did feel that there was a request for budget and support, and even support which would be related to budget, and so that's where the decision was made to include it in the budget package.
Thank you. Staff have noted that you've got some ideas for next time around for the budget tool, for example, the budget book tool. I'm curious about Let's Talk Squamish. And by now we have experience with it, or our department has experience with the use of that venue for multiple projects over the last few years. Do you have any thoughts about how it's working this time around for the budget? And we have had some input on it that people did find it clumsy or couldn't find the package of data that we have in front of us. People wanting to dig deeper. And the number of users that are contributing comments and questions on the page, I would hope have been more. And maybe they're doing it, of course they are on other venues, but do you have any thoughts on how and what we can do with that venue for the budget time? Let's Talk Squamish. Any thoughts or reporting on that venue?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. We have recently switched engagement platforms to a much more evolved platform called Social Pinpoint, and we are learning how to use it. And the budget campaign is the campaign that we essentially launched the platform with. And so we are learning, for example, we have a parking campaign in draft and have learn about all sorts of different ways to use the tool that we will certainly use next budget campaign next year. In terms of your question about the comments and questions through Let's Talk, we seem to have multiple comments and questions a week. And just speaking from staff capacity, we have it's a lot on our plate to just get those questions answered. And so like we've had just 2 today come in. And so I don't, if we had, 10 more a week, for example, I think it would be quite challenging to answer those questions. So I'm personally happy with the response rate and hoping that next year, in hopes of more questions and comments, we'll be able to streamline things so that we'll be able to answer those questions promptly and swiftly.
If I may just add as well, we do recognize that a survey is a very easy way to get more feedback. We have had a lot of success with a survey in previous years, and we have shifted that tactic to the spring to ensure that we are getting that earlier feedback to help inform the budget preparation. Let's Talk, as Fiona mentions, has a lot of opportunity. And, one of the opportunities that we see with Let's Talk is to move the conversation away from the social media conversations, which tend to, deteriorate a little bit with a wide range of comments. So we absolutely recognize that there is a huge amount of budget information to share and to organize. We think, as Fiona mentioned, we think as we work with the new platform, we can improve upon that and also improve upon how Budget Book as the online tool continues to work for us with our finance team and with the functionality that offers.
Thank you very much. I just want before another question to acknowledge that I was very impressed with the answers delivered by staff on Let's Talk Squamish, and I would hope that the participants there also see the effort made and the care and time put into those answers. Very impressive. And I can appreciate that that's a lot of work, and there are capacity issues with it. Finally, I note this also in the comments throughout that we've received and have before us in the package today, but also in the evening of the budget info night at Brennan Park, is people, depending on their relationship with the projects involved in economic and community development, there is a degree of confusion as to what that great big bracket means. Because as I took people over to the binder and pointed out, this is Economic Development Department projects, this is all of the rest of community development, which is our pages. So there is quite a difference. And I wonder whether we might consider the labeling of that category, because it might be throwing some people off, especially when people have the perception that we're not emphasizing economic development this time around. But the description of that broad category wherein the economic development projects are quite few relative to the rest. Any thoughts on that?
I might ask one of our other budget managers or department heads to respond. Ms. Boxrud.
Thank you for the question through the chair. And apologies, I did not introduce myself. So Heather Boxer, General Manager of Financial IT and Procurement Services. Thank you for the question. Certainly in terms of the financial plan, there is a certain amount of non-flexibility, essentially, that we're unable to further parse that out. However, when it comes to the side of communications, we can certainly highlight items that are within those segments. So our financial plan is required to be at a segment level, and then a cost center is sort of the next level down. So we certainly can on the Let's Talk, on our budget page, we can parse that out. However, from a financial plan perspective, it is regulated.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair. I'll have a few comments to offer later.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Stoner.
I think picking up on Councillor Anderson's question, there was an item in the Tourism Squamish submission around seeking clarification for the economic and community development line item, which in the financial plan summary is over $8 million. And then they could only find $500,000 in special projects being itemized. Can someone speak to the differentiation there and how that is being presented?
Sure. Through the chair, Julie Vengi, General Manager of Community Development. So the 8.7 million is the actual overall total for the economic and community development segments. So that comprises the operating expenses and special operating projects of 3 cost centers. So community and land use planning, environment and sustainability, and economic development. So it's not just the economic development portfolio.
You're good for now, Councillor Stoner? Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions? Councillor Pettingill?
Process-wise, if there were a couple adjustments we wanted to make, is today our opportunity, or will we have that opportunity next week?
I'd suggest that this would be a good opportunity for that, given that we'd have a bit of time to understand the impacts of. I'd probably prefer some wording around exploring or something, so we can look at what the impacts would be and get some feedback from staff before we move it. But I'll go to staff as well, just make sure that would be the preference. I'm assuming that's my preference, or it feels like it is.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, that would be staff's preference. In terms of process, maybe a little bit late in the process this year, but certainly for things next year. And then in terms of actual budget, this is a great time as well.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is, I'm sort of wrestling in my mind, sort of getting near the limit for an increase for this year, but 2026 is a fair bit bigger, and I'm wondering, does it make sense to pull a few things forward actually, to smooth things out a bit? A few of the things that I would eye and consider and seem more feasible in terms of not overburdening staff and so on are being funded from reserve. And so there's sort of an indirection between direct taxation and reserve and so on. But reserves are ultimately funded from taxation. So is there a mechanism by which, if a couple things like, a trail sweeper, for example, was moved, it's coming from reserve, but it would diminish the amount we transfer to reserve because so we sort of still get the smoothing impact, or it's like it's reserve. I just can't think of it that way.
Thank you for the question through the chair. They're very different. The contribution to the reserves are more static and long-term in nature, and they're based on the asset management reserve funding strategy. When the project's actually funded from reserve, that's it. It's actually funded from reserve, so it doesn't have the tax impact there. So unfortunately, that isn't a mechanism in which to smooth out future taxes.
Yeah, I'll go to Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. This Councillor Pettingill's question leads into my question, and one that I've been thinking about a reasonable amount lately. That also came up in the conversation. This was the first time in the budget discussion. It's the first time on that grid of things we hear from the public that we see the taxation increases becoming it's the largest concern we've seen this year compared to any previous year. And I know that has multiple factors, like the actual rate of taxation increase is one of those factors, but the economic environment that we're living in is another factor, which is not within our direct control. But that leads me to thinking about 2026 and how our community may or may not be able to digest 15.8% general taxation revenue requirement, or a taxation revenue requirement. Sitting here in this chair, I feel like I'm able to talk about one item. I'm able to say, let's have a conversation about this item and whether we do or don't do this item. Where does the conversation happen? Where can council have the conversation if we are concerned about the overall level for 2026? I know 2025, it's item by item basically at this point. But if we were to say 2026, how can we bring down that overall tax increase? How could council have that conversation and move forward in a productive way if that's something we wanted to do?
I have some thoughts on this, but I'll go to staff first to sort of see how they'd like to receive this direction, and then I'll venture some thoughts of my own.
Thank you for the question. I'll endeavor to try to answer that. I think the challenge really is that a lot of what's happening in the next couple of years are a result of prior decisions. So it's always that focus on the long-term planning side of things. So what we call the pre-committed, a lot of that is the challenge there. So it's really talking about it at the strategic planning level, where the financial plan lands is results of the strategic plan. So I would suggest that the conversation happens in January when we bring back the strategic planning that prepares the thought process for 2026, however, and beyond. However, like I said, a lot of these things are items from decisions in 23, 24, 25. A big element to that is the facilities, which are debt funded, and that the facilities are now the debt is being issued. So that is the challenge. There's a number of elements as well that are unfortunately outside of council's decision-making framework, which are things around the police increases. Those items they're external. So it is challenging, but it is really that long view thinking and working within the strategic planning framework.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And one of the challenges with working within this strategic planning framework is we don't have the budget information at that time. When we make strategic planning decisions, we don't have information about how much this thing is going to cost when we put that thing into a priority queue. And so I feel like there's a disconnect in our processes. Yeah. I think we're missing a piece for council. And this is really, I don't know that this is a question for any particular staff member or if staff can really answer this, but I think us as council, we need to really think about mechanisms by which we can talk about the budget as a whole way ahead of time so that we can give staff time to respond and give the numbers, because by the time we get into strategic planning, the beginning of next year, it's almost too late to make, at the beginning of 2025, it's almost too late to make changes for 2026, specific changes, because the strategic planning also takes several months. So I think we're missing a piece, and I'm hoping that staff can maybe think about that, and Mayor can think about that and find ways for us to have conversations about how much our budget is or is not moving, how much our tax requirement is or is not moving on a broad scale.
Thank you. I think I do think that the strategic planning process is the place for that. And throughout this whole throughout the budget process this year, as we're talking about contemplating the tax increases, across all the years of the financial plan, and having conversations with the community, I think it's really interesting when the say tax increases linked to certain numbers, whether it's the rate of inflation or some other, or something that's arbitrary as far as someone's comfort level goes, doesn't account for the community needs necessarily. So I think there absolutely needs to be a balance of those things. And I know that whether we've consciously or subconsciously weighed those things as we've been through this process already. I think those discussions do need to live at, or best reflected at strategic plan, and then through all our decisions going forward. But so I think for as far as where we can go with this today, that's going to be the spot for this one. But go ahead.
So then, so if we continue to have this live in strategic planning, then I'd like to make a request, a hope that we can bring more budgetary information into strategic planning. Bring more information on how much are our decisions in strategic planning, how much are those going to cost us? Because that's important information I feel we often lack at the strategic planning phase.
Okay, we'll look forward to those conversations. And I think this goes back to something I've been saying throughout this process, is that nearly every conversation we have is a budget conversation. And that's true at this table. It's also true when we're out in the community talking about the aspirations of the community as well. So I think it's important we carry that with us always, and we will bring it absolutely into to the greatest extent we can into the strategic planning update going forward. Councillor Stoner.
In response to some of this discussion, and I'm trying to frame this as a question to staff, but maybe it's just a comment for my council colleagues to consider. One of the biggest areas that impacts future years taxation is service level changes that we decide today. So those become non-discretionary or pre-committed in following years. And so I think if this body does want to respond to the concerns that we're hearing from community with regards to increases, that's one level where we actually have a fair bit of discretion this year. It's a challenging conversation to have. But I think there could be direction given to staff to come back and reconsider the service level increases, which then have a following impact on the 2026 budget. That's a 3.7% increase in the 2025 budget is our service level and changes. And those get wrapped up into nearly a 3% pre-committed increase for next year. So if folks are really thinking about where that opportunity is, to me, that's where the biggest option is around this table.
Okay, any other questions while we have our staff with us? The recommendation is to receive the report. So I'm going to move that we receive the report. If there's a seconder for that, or do you have a question before we go there? Sorry, I just didn't see hands.
Well, I guess receiving, I did have a couple things I wanted to test in terms of, but I suppose we can do that after receiving.
Well, we start? Well, I'll move with starting that we receive the report. We need to get that piece of business done, then we'll see what else needs to happen from there. Councillor Hamilton seconds. Just specifically on the budget engagement, I was really impressed with both with our staff's work on this aspect. It's really, really challenging and spans a huge portion of the year, starting with the spring engagement all the way through to where we are today. Also like to thank my council colleagues for their commitment to participate in all the varied budget focused events, and you know, and the public for showing up, whether that's online or in person at the various events. Had some great conversations. And I think even more importantly, I witnessed some great conversations amongst the public as we were all sort of grappling with where we should go, you know. And I did hear more about the things that we're not doing rather than the tax increase. And which I think is interesting, but you know, and to deliver those things requires more taxation as well. So I think it's a really challenging conversation to have, and I think that in the context of our communications department, I think we did a really good job of providing enough information to be able to have those conversations and the right venues. So thank you for that. I felt that I had more information. I feel I have more information here now than I ever have at this table. So thank you very much. Other comments, Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. I can't resist passing on a comment regarding the marine sector impact study. I know that we may have other opportunity to discuss it even later today, but the reality is we have not done harbor planning since the 1990s. And the estuary plan and the 1991 harbor plan that was done by the Sea to Sky Economic Development Commission, this really is overdue work. And I just pass on that as a concern that it's not being, may not be prioritized as it should be. Secondly, the Squamish Wind Sports Society letter, I've mentioned that I might have expected to see it on a regular council meeting agenda correspondence item. And the reason is there's more than just asks for facilities and budget. There's also observations about dialogue with this community group and the sector, recreation sector, so that I hope that we'll have opportunity and time to discuss some of the contents of that letter, other than in the budget exercise where we are today, right now. With respect to the venue and the events that we've been a part of, some of those 80-odd people that attended the open house at Brennan Park were people that would have come to a town hall style of event or would have grabbed the mic at a town hall style event. They were eager to deliver their opinions and to have other people share in their observations. We did not pursue that this time. We had a very different venue and a different style of event. But I just wanted to pass on that I really believe that there's a value in giving people opportunity to learn from each other's questions, and answers, and issues. This is what happens at a town hall style event with the mic and an open floor. It also, in another way, happens at our coffee table meetings as well, and also online. Social media is ephemeral, but the other venues that we're looking at, as per staff's explanations of where we might be going on those venues, they're important for that reason. People can watch and look and listen to other people's questions and concerns. A minor note, I think that airport strategy does not belong in transportation. It belongs in economic development, but that's just a footnote. Finally, I think that the summary package of the input that we have before us, in my view, is the best ever. And I think that we really are improving year by year in our communications functions around the budget. But well done. I think it's a very nice package, easy to read. A lot of work, obviously, is reflected in what we have before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, just a word of thanks to both our communication staff as well as everybody else who is sitting in this room and showed up not for one evening, but at least 2 evenings because there was a power outage the first time around. and everybody in our community who decided to participate. I agree, the numbers show it. It's been the highest level of engagement in the last few years, which is really exciting to see. And I think that was reflected both online as well as in person. I had some really, really in-depth conversations about even like very specific line items, all the way to like really big questions around OCP and neighborhood hubs, and really appreciate the way that community conversation was facilitated through the budget process this year. I do look forward to kicking it off with a community survey next year and aligning those survey buckets with kind of our spending areas so that we can report back to a community around how our spending is aligning with community priorities. I think that would be a good improvement going forward. But generally, I was really, really pleased to see that we got feedback from those as young as 5. Thanks to Callan for his words and requests for 200 playgrounds. That's a really big ask, but we'll try really hard. All the way up to the seniors at the wellness fair, and to my council colleagues who were able to be at more budget events than I was. Thank you for filling in for me. And I think that this, it's a challenging time for our budget, both within the district walls and then for those who are paying the bill at the end of the day. And so I think you can hear it in some of my council colleagues' comments and some of mine that we are still wrestling with where we're landing. But the reality is that we really are playing catch up in our community for some of the taxation components. So appreciate everybody for having the hard conversations, for showing up, and for summarizing all the hard work that was captured over the last few months. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Pettingill, is that your hand? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So a few things, I did have, and I had some last year as well, some conversations about people really eager to see a pool or another rink sooner. And my sense is that there's not a clear understanding of what order of magnitude cost will be. And we did a few weeks ago, I think, briefly speak about, getting some sort of not mock budgets, but sort of what would this look like if we accelerated it? And I had some requests for that, and also, some conversations with people when I said, how would you feel about a special assessment for a few years if it meant an extra $1,000 a year, but you got the rink much sooner? And a number, not everyone, but some people really had interest. And I think just putting some more concrete numbers just of what this might actually mean, so people can sort of contextualize this better, because I think it's really quite abstract. Yes, I want a rink, but it's hard to really grasp what that means in the context of everyone else. And because that is one of the key focuses of a number of people, I think having that context would be important. I didn't have as many people concerned about the rate this year, a little more next year. But when I pushed people on, so what would we change or deprioritize, I didn't have a lot of success. So people, I think, were concerned with the rate, but from my experience, weren't able to point to things that they wanted to see us not do, which is sort of the situation we find ourselves in as well. And it's sort of where why the number is where it is. And I think that's something, if we want to see lower tax numbers as a community, we'll have to figure out what things collectively we don't want to do. And so far, overall, it seems that we mostly do want to do the things we're doing. I think I'm reminded, and I've said it before, but tax is really important, and it's how we take care of each other as a community, especially those, in my mind, that are struggling the most. And, no one likes to have more money leaving their wallet, but I think of the money that leaves our wallet, this is one of the most important things we can do for each other as a community. It's how we build community. And I think it's important that we not lose sight of that. It is interesting, though, because, I think, and I've as well raised some concerns about the number next year. And I think largely it's psychological, to be honest, because we have had tax increases in the bottom third of BC for the last number of years. And so now our increases are sort of on average with everyone else, but they're based on much lower numbers. So we're arguably still at a lower amount. And if we kept next year's spending exactly the same as it's currently planned, or 2026 planned exactly as it is, but raise the 2025 number by $1 million, the 2026 tax increase now would be much smaller. and all we've done is increase this year's spending. And I think that's really hard for people to wrap their head around. I'm not quite sure what to do there, but maybe some discussion around that, because when we get too wrapped up in the just percentage increase, I think we lose a lot of what's really going on, and that won't necessarily bring us to good decisions. So I think, yeah, I'll just sort of leave it there, that I would like to see a way to moderate the 2026 number. There aren't a whole lot of things I want to see changed in this, although I'll raise a couple. And I think we still have some discussions to have as a community, because there's a whole lot of things we are sort of insisting that we have, and we're seeing the cost of that. But overall, I think staff has done a good job of focusing on what people are really wanting and needing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, I'm going to Councillor French, then Greenlaw.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Speaking in support of receiving this package, I'll completely agree with Councillor Anderson that this information package is superior to what we've seen in the past. So a really great job there, and I hope that we can repeat that in the years ahead. And when I reflect back on my experience at the Brennan Park event, event number 2, where the power stayed on all the way through, and my council coffee evening, I found that the feedback that I was hearing was constructive, more constructive than I've heard in past years. So I appreciate that we have an engaged citizenry who is coming to us with helpful comments, because I haven't always seen that during the budget process. And I've been a long-term observer of budget processes in this community, and I've truly seen an evolution of this process, where back in the early 90s, there was significant attention on how much paper clips cost, to where we're at now, where a lot of what we're sinking our financial resources into is strategic long-term planning. And when I came into the meeting, Councillor Hamilton was expressing exactly what my concern has reached with the budget process. We've got so much tied up in strategic planning that we don't really see the details, and don't want us to go back to the age of counting paper clips, but I think we need to find something in the middle where we're getting a little bit more detail on some of those pre-committed. And Mayor Herford, your point isn't lost on me. Every single conversation we have truly is a budget conversation. And as we're having those conversations throughout the year, we need to keep that in mind, that every decision we make in every regular everyday council meeting is going to have a budget impact, and we need to be conscious of that. So with that, I will be voting in favor of receiving the package.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw.
Thanks through the chair. Thanks again for all your hard work, for all of our staff in the room here. Unfortunately, I also couldn't make it to most of the budget engagement sessions, as they perfectly aligned with pre-existing commitments that I already had. So I am particularly appreciative of these summaries that staff has provided, and I'm also appreciative of my fellow colleagues stepping in. I heard and experienced wonderful things about the new searchable, more intuitive budget interface, so kudos to staff for that. I'm sure it was a big lift, and it was an even greater success. It's great to see this level of engagement from the public. I think everyone around this table has at one time or another advocated for more public engagement, so that's great. I also wanted to echo some of the comments from Councillor Hamilton and Councillor French. From my perspective, I tend to think out here most of the time. So some of these, small scale pieces to me are difficult. I mean, it's a little bit different from what Councillor Hamilton was saying, but I do think that there is value of having even a loose estimate of cost as we're talking about things, including them in a strategic plan. Obviously, we all know about cost escalation. We're pretty familiar with it. So, but just having a basic idea. Again, I just like thinking about bigger pictures. So that kind of helps bring in the financial bigger picture for me. I find some of the public concerns, for instance, the upgrades around the Adventure Center, speaks to perhaps some more need for more education in the community to the prescriptive nature of intergovernmental grants. I've heard that concern too before about the Adventure Center upgrades, but again, like when we get intergovernmental grants, they are incredibly prescriptive and we need to use them on what we've received them for. It is a tough time financially for everyone, no less for municipalities across the country who are having to reckon with with aging infrastructure and grappling with the costs of growth. And it's really hard to balance this ever increasing cost of services and construction that drive these taxation escalations while trying to meet the desires of our community, like rinks and pools and lawn bowling. I do wonder, historically, I think a lot of our municipal amenities were built through business donations and volunteer labor. And sometimes I look at our community and all of the skills that we contain, and I wonder if there is, if some of these less complex projects, like returfing a soccer or lawn bowling pitch, could have costs slashed through more volunteer labor. But I don't know. That's more of a musing. I don't know how to incorporate that into a municipal structure. But if anybody thinks about that, let me know. I'm on board. So thanks for all your hard work. It's no small feat preparing a budget for a town of 30,000 people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Greenlaw, one of the ways that we have a good example of leveraging community and volunteer support is the Sorka Bike Skills Park at Brennan Park. That facility would have cost us probably an order of magnitude more money to deliver compared to what Sorka could do. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about our partnership agreement policy. Hopefully we can find ways to fairly leverage our community's involvement in building our community's infrastructure. Specifically, so on the motion at hand, so the engagement, thank you very much. Amazing job. This is, I guess, my third budget engagement season or exercise. And to Councillor Anderson's point on town halls, last year we had the town hall style. This year we went back to the more conversational style. And I do think that there's value in that town hall style. I do think there's value in community members speaking and hearing each other. So hopefully in next year, we can move a little bit back towards that style. But I know that's a strategic planning, or perhaps a communications decision. But I do see value there. Regarding the new tools that we have, I'm loving them. Keep it up. I think that the more clearly we can communicate how we're spending tax money, the more confidence our community will have in us spending it efficiently. So I think that yes to the new tools, but we keep going. We have more work to do. I have specific ideas, but we won't go into them here. So new tools, yes. One of the things I'd like to something that became clear during the budget engagement is it's in our numbers, but not brought to the forefront. When a project is in the budget, but we don't currently have an identified source of funding. For example, swimming pool and ice rink. They're in the budget, but we have no identified source of funding. So the community has a difficult time distinguishing what is in the budget and we have an identified source of funding and when don't we. Lawn bowling is a great example. Conversation about lawn bowling where the conversation was that they thought it wasn't funded, and maybe it wasn't at the time I had that conversation, but it's been moved into CACs. That's a much smaller thing than a swimming pool or an ice rink. But I'm hoping in the future we can find a way to identify when the funding has been sourced and planned versus when it hasn't. I think that we can have more genuine conversations with our community about what money we have available. On funding on budget and taxation increases and our spending. During the budget engagement, a member of the community said to me, I don't mind spending more money on taxes. I have no problem. I completely agree that we need to spend the money to build our community. But I want to know that it's spent efficiently. And so I think we have a challenge, and this speaks to a larger question about a stereotype of government spending just fundamentally being inefficient. And I hope that we can recognize that stereotype and do our best to buck it, to be able to prove that we are spending money efficiently. I think that we do, but I think we also have an onus to prove it. So whatever we can do to demonstrate that we are spending tax dollars very efficiently, we will have more support for people to engage in agreeing and spending money in increased taxes. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll call the question then. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Councilor Pettingill, do you want to try a motion?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I just sort of, well, I guess I'll do it one by one. Is wanted to investigate removing the outdoor gym relocation from the 2025 budget. C845011-6.
Okay. Second for discussion. Go on.
Yeah, just this is one that is originally the line item was to repair it, and then it was changed to relocate. I guess in my mind, this is something that my sense is it was a good experiment, but hasn't really gotten traction. I haven't seen or heard a lot of demand or interest, and it's not a huge amount of money, but you know, when I look at, you know, relative to, for example, what we're putting in the youth council and so on, I'm just not sure this one is a priority for me.
Just being conscious that we have a motion on the floor, I wondered if I get a point of clarity from staff on this item. And I don't remember where this falls inside of the splash park discussion. Does it need to move from where it is to facilitate that construction, or is it unrelated?
Through the chair, so it doesn't need to move to facilitate the splash park. So just to clarify, the original recommendation was to relocate it, and then the amended recommendation was to repair it because there was no site to relocate it. Either way, there's potentially cost involved. If you relocate it, there's a cost to do that. If you repair it, there's a cost to do that. If you leave it as is, it's essentially will be an unsafe area if you're not spending any money towards it. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's an actual ability to do anything with this item without spending funds on it.
Okay, so, and can I be reminded of the motion? Because we did just hear that I think your motion said relocate. We're just hearing that it was repair is what's actually in there right now. Did I get, sorry, I just want to make sure I don't have my wires crossed.
Yeah, I think the wording in the budget, I believe, is outdoor gym relocation. But basically that, I guess I'm challenging whether it's relocation, repair, or whatever. I'm having a challenge spending that money on that particular item, which I haven't heard is a really high demand piece of infrastructure.
Okay. I won't be supporting the motion. I think that one of the reasons that we've heard throughout the various times we've contemplated that structure is that you know, it's in a challenging spot, which is why there was contemplating moving it. However, with that area, I think, is about to become a focal point with the splash park, and I think it'll be far more visible. So I think that the pieces that we do, and that coupled with the pieces that we do have in play, being responsible with ensuring that they're safe and can be used by the public is important. So I won't be supporting the motion for those reasons. Councillor Hamilton.
I will be supporting the motion. When I look through the budget and the project justification, the gym is tucked away in rear area, not highly used, in the way of the new pool and maybe in the way of the new splash park area. So we just heard that it's not in the way of the new splash park area. So as far as I can read our budget, the justification as submitted in our budget for this is that it may be in the way of the new pool, which is years away. And so I don't see a justification to move it just because it's maybe in the way of a facility that is years away.
We just heard from our staff that it was repair was the item that was in there. So that what's there is repaired. That's what we just heard here.
So the original intent was to relocate, and there's a question brought through a previous budget meeting around this item, and staff recommended to not relocate and to repair the existing equipment and co-locate it next to the splash park to create higher usage due to that new amenity.
I'll go around and we'll see if that changes anything. I just wanted to be clear what we're hearing here. Other comments on this? Councillor Stoner.
Councillor Pettingill, can you please repeat your motion?
I guess I was trying to respect the earlier suggestion to have staff explore removing this from the budget. So removing this budget item essentially. I don't know if that's effectively the same thing as just asking them to remove it versus explore removing it.
Through the chair, I won't support the motion because I heard that it's a piece of infrastructure that exists that is either unsafe, and so we either need to remove it or we need to repair it, because otherwise it just sits there as a stranded asset that's potentially a liability. And so I would maybe entertain a different motion that would be to cost out what it would be to remove it if it's not a used piece of infrastructure. But it feels feels like it's not a great decision to just leave it there. So I think we need to do something with it.
Yep, go ahead.
I have a point of clarity from staff. The word unsafe was used in staff's response. That's a very important word. Is that facility unsafe? And if so, why is it still open?
So currently it is usable. It is not unsafe, but repairs are required to bring it up to standard. So it can still be used, but staff identified there is some upgrades that are required to maintain the infrastructure, or it will become unsafe.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Anderson, Stoner, French, Greenlaw, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. Did you have another one? Go ahead. Yeah.
So I was going to have staff explore removing C8651201 pickleball landscaping.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Go ahead.
So this is one, I mean, pickleball, there has been significant community demand and significant use we've seen, which is good to see given the amount that was spent. But there are many demands. And one of the things I heard during the engagement, and it was more about the rink and the pool, but people sort of saying they don't want anything fancy. They want just sort of the basic functional something they can actually do what the sport is, and that's what the concern is. And when I look at the demands for cricket, and we have sort of wind sports looking for some solutions and so on, it's just hard for me to prioritize landscaping. I would like to think this is an area where there's some community opportunity, to my colleague's earlier point. And so this is one where, and it might be a better option to just push it off for a year to, will we explore what the options might be? But again, in the context of everything, it's hard for me to put this amount of money there this year.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I won't be supporting this one either. The pickleball courts are a great asset. They were built professionally, and it's a great facility along with the tennis courts that were reconditioned in that area. And right now, what we have is the surrounding area is something short of a disaster. The walk from the parking area to the courts has got a section, an area where there's ankle biter stones, and there is a rolled up piece of artificial turf that's been sitting off to the side for months that I suspect is maybe sitting there just waiting to be rolled out and properly placed. I don't know that for sure, but it's a total eyesore, and it's not in great condition, that area around the pickleball courts. And I would like to see that project finished and completed so that the area surrounding those great new pickleball courts reflect what we see on the professional level of the court construction.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Anderson.
I actually don't see opportunity for saving money at the pickleball court area generally for another reason, and that is it has very unsafe conditions at nighttime. We really do need to address lighting at 2 crosswalks immediately adjacent to those courts. It's a very serious issue, and I've spoken to various people about it and visited this area. So I think that I don't see us saving resources at this site for that other reason. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
I guess
I was going to ask you also in your comments if you could read out the number. I'm trying to find the line item.
Okay, thanks. And I'm trying not to use glasses, but maybe I need to. I may have misread it. So it's 34600. Oh, sorry, no, that's C845011. No, that's the German location. C8651201. My apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But to my colleague, I think if there's a significant issue with lighting, I'm wondering if then there might be a resolution to redirect the funds, if that would make more sense. Because I heard a justification for lighting, but not for landscaping. But
other comments? Councillor Storm.
Can I propose a friendly amendment? That staff bring back further clarity on what the $50,000 is for landscaping at Brennan Park tennis and pickleball courts?
Is that a friendly amendment? Okay. We may have that answer in the room already. So let's do that and see how far we can get here. If that extra time's not required. We do have a motion on the floor. So I think that, well, the motion was just amended to be get more information. So we could vote on that and then.
I will take my motion back and we can vote Councillor Pettingill's down.
Okay. Well, I would hold on just a sec. I'm gonna go to our corporate officer. What I was thinking, just to float a path through here, just procedurally, was that the motion was to get more information. We have the ability to do that in the room, so we can just vote on that, get the information, and then if another motion is spurred from that, flows from that, then we're in the clear. But that was my understanding. We'll go to our corporate officer.
That would be cleaner than retracting and putting
Okay.
Pettingill's on. Yeah.
So the motion is to receive more information. We have someone here to do that. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor of receiving more information? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you have some information to share with us, please, sir?
Hello, Devin Kinaga, Director of Public Works, through the Mayor. So I'll start by apologizing. I don't have the exact answer to your question. Whether that budget item was to include lighting or not, it's something we can absolutely take back and confirm. Typically, landscaping lighting can be considered landscaping when thinking about it from a design perspective. So that's something that we could look at. In terms of other aspects of what it would cover, though, safety, that site is not finished, and so it's already been brought up, the concerns about safety of accessing the courts. That is absolutely an important item. And then there's also the consideration of invasives. So the area has been disturbed and it hasn't been replanted. And if you leave an area for too long, typically 6 months to a year, you start getting invasives growing in, or you start getting anything that will grow starts growing. And it can actually potentially cost significantly more down the road. If, for example, if you get knotweed growing there, it could actually completely destroy our courts. So landscaping is important not only for the aesthetics, but it's also really important to avoid unwanted species growing to protect the infrastructure that we just built. So just another thing to consider.
And with the landscaping cover, any drainage issues there, like would that be included in that, or is that some other item? Just
yeah, great question. I think for localized drainage, typically that would, there'd be grading and landscaping associated with that. For a broader drainage concern, it would not be, getting it away from the site beyond that into the district system. It wouldn't be covering that.
okay, yeah. Thank you for that clarity. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
So I'll leave that one for now then. One last one that I want to attempt.
Please. Yep.
So that staff remove 34600 RCMP mechanical upgrade replacement of heat pumps from the 2025 budget.
Okay, is there a seconder for this? You seconding?
Yeah, I'll second for discussion.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
So normally I would be all in favor of modernizing energy systems to something much more efficient. There are a number of items, actually a whole bucket of upgrades to the RCMT building. The rest of them are for subsequent years, which is why I didn't propose them now. It's just the 2025 one. My concern is the proximity to the Forest Pipeline. I've spoken about this. I have not received significant or sufficient information, although I've been requesting it, about the safety and risk of that pipeline. It is unusual. Fortis doesn't have a pipeline like this. There's nothing like this, as I understand, this close to human settlement. And so it's a concern for me, lacking that information, to put district money into a facility right there. And so I think for the 2026, there's an opportunity to get that information to understand what the risk is. But not having that information, I can't justify that 2025 spend. Maybe this is something we could do in 2026 if we're convinced that there is adequate safety, but I haven't seen that, so I can't support this. Thank you.
I'm going to risk, I think, could someone speak to the urgency of this piece and the timing of it? We have essentially a municipal building where we have a tenant and needs to be occupiable, but just on the timing piece, please. Urgency.
Warren Jaggers, Acting Manager of Facilities. So these heat pumps have been phased into 3 phases. This would be the 3rd phase. They are all at end of life right now, and we have had one outside of the scope of work fail last year. So we are on replacing them as they fail. But yes, it is certainly something that needs to be addressed in the next few years.
So then what's in the budget? Is it proposed to be, is it there to, so if something fails, it can be replaced, or is it a proactive piece?
That's correct. It's a proactive approach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Council, any comments on this one? I'll start us maybe. I won't be supporting the motion. I think the I think it's important that we have the ability to that we make appropriate investments in our facilities upkeep and yeah, we like it or not, we need to have the budget there to do it, and is far more cost effective to do these things proactively if we can than reactively when they fail. And the proactive ones can be done with minimal impact to service delivery, which in this case is public safety. So I think it's important that we keep this item in the budget where it is. But I'll go around the room for other comments before I call the question. Councillor Greenlaw.
I'm going to be supporting the motion on the floor, although I do agree with the comments that Mayor Herford just made. I do think it is important to maintain municipal assets. I am also very concerned about the lack of information that is forthcoming about the risks associated with this pipeline in proximity to our first responders and to housing. And I would like to have more information before putting more money into assets that will be effectively in proximity to that pipeline.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Stoner.
I'll keep it brief and just say I won't be supporting the motion. You can ask for more information from Fortis and still invest in our municipal assets. We are in the middle of a climate emergency. We know that heat pumps and transitioning away from fossil fuels is an important part of addressing our own footprint. And so I think it's important to support this motion this year.
Any other comments? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion either, but I'd like to express appreciation for Councillor Pettingill to bringing it up. That is, it's a line item that had escaped my attention. It's $250,000 for next year. And I'm convinced that it is a prudent investment at this time. There's another line item in here I'll just mention, and in the same light, the floor finishing at the Adventure Center. However, that is for, I believe it's 2029, but I think it's important for us to have a look at these kind of facility investments because Tourism Squamish, in fact, even Tourism Squamish questions whether that is a would like to have or a necessity, but I won't go further on that line item. At this time, it is a few years hence. Thank you. Floor finishing at the Adventure Center.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. The general preemptively replacing things at end of life, I think that's a really good plan. I also think we can, there's mechanisms to potentially save money to make sure to have money available in case something fails and replace it quickly. But I don't see disruption at our RCMP building, like waiting for something like this to fail for us to replace is a sensible course of action in the RCMP building. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion and opposed? Councillor Anderson, Hamilton, Stoner, French, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. If there are no other budget-specific motions, I'm looking for a motion to close so we can move on to our next topics. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll recess and reconvene in the close at